Hello, 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 Honored Algebra 1B students of Mrs. Williams. I hope you are doing well. So this week's lesson is on factoring again, factoring quadratics. But now it's going to get a little bit more difficult because a is not going to be equal to 1. So the first thing you should always do when you look at a quadratic that you have to factor, if a is 1, super simple, do what we did last week. Okay, if it is not, then here's a way so that it will always work for you if it is factorable. Okay, and so I have these notes also attached to the assignment so you can print them and go along with me because it kind of has steps that go along with the work on the right side. So this one that we're going to start with, I should have already gotten my pen ready. So we're going to be factoring this critter right here. Okay, so 2x squared minus 5x subtract 3. So let me grab my skinny pen. All right, so first step, same as it was last time. I'm always going to have you guys identify the a, the b, and the c when you're working with quadratics. So our a is 2, our b is negative 5, and our c is negative 3. Okay? Now this one is different because before we just worried about C and B. However, now A comes into play. Okay, we're going to create our magic number. Magic number is simply A times C. So I'm going to take my A value of 2, my C value of negative 3. So my magic number is negative 6. Magic number is negative 6. Okay, so now we find factors of the magic number. So finding factors of negative 6. Okay, so now this is where it's similar to what we've done before. You can hear my husband in the other room talking to his kids. All right, so we're finding factors of the magic number. Okay, that have a sum equal to b, just like we did before. So our sum in this case has to be negative 5. Okay, so we could try negative 3, positive 1. That sum is negative 2. It's not that one. If you flip-flop that with a 3 and a negative 1, it'd be positive 2. Negative 6, positive 1. You multiply them together, equal negative 6, so that works. You add them together, you get negative 5. This one is the winner. Okay, so now what we do, okay, is we rewrite the trinomials with new numbers taking the middle term's place. Okay, so actually, let's see here. It's easier when I have you in person. I'm going to rewrite the trinomial as it started with right above this. So I'm going to write 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. So this, I just rewrote it here just for this first one. Okay. So all I've actually done is changed this middle term. Instead of one term, now we're going to have 2. So I'm going to bring down my 2x squared. I'm leaving it the same. What I'm going to write for number 6 is equivalent to what is written right above it. Okay. So now instead of negative 5x, I'm going to bring down this negative 6 and make it negative 6x. Okay. Now, instead of putting negative 5x, now I'm bringing down the plus 1x or plus x. Okay, and then I'm bringing down minus 3. So these guys stay the same, and then I've just split that b term into 2 terms. Okay, I'm going to kind of mark this out. Okay, so now what we're going to do, now we've made an unsimplified polynomial with 4 terms. Again, all I did was split the b term into 2 terms. Okay, so now what I want us to do is to, hold on, I'm getting my pen again. Gee willikers. I want us to look at just these first 2 terms. Okay, look at those first 2 terms only. And I want you to figure out what the greatest common factor is of those two terms. Okay, well first we look at the coefficient of each one. Well, they're both even, so we can factor out a 2. So we're going to factor out a 2. And then they both have an x, at least one x. So we're factoring out an x. Okay, so this becomes, just looking at those two terms, this becomes 2x times something equals 2x squared. So I need to put an x here. And then 2x times something equals negative 6x, so negative 3. Okay, now we're going to look, oh, that went away, didn't it? Okay, now we're going to look at the last two terms. I'm going to highlight those guys a different color. Let's look at these two terms. Okay, now again, we're looking for the greatest common factor. Well, the only common factor that those guys have is just the number 1. Okay, so I'm going to factor out a 1. Okay, you wouldn't technically have to write it, but I'm going to encourage you to write it right now, and I think you'll see why in a moment. Then you think 1 times what is x? It's x. 1 times what is negative 3? It's negative 3. Okay, so now I have this long, let's see, get a different one. Let's get green. This whole thing right here. Now, if you've done it correctly, you'll notice that the quantity, or the expression that's within the parentheses is equal. Okay, so what's in this set of parentheses here is x minus 3. This is x minus 3 as well. If you've done it correctly, it will be the same. That is one of your final factors, x minus 3. Okay, your other factor is going to be what you have factored out. So it's going to be 2x plus 1. Okay, so those are your two factors. Your two factors are x minus 3 and 2x plus 1. If you were to multiply those two binomials together, you would get what we began the problem with, 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. Okay, lots of steps. Once you start doing this and getting into practice, it won't take you that long, but I want to go slowly here at the beginning. Okay, so let's look at the next one we have here. So again, identify your A, your B, and your C. So my A is 8, my B is 6, and my C is negative 5. I have to find my magic number. Again, that's multiplying A times C. So 8 times negative 5. Multiplying these two guys together to equal negative 40. That is my magic number. I have to find the factors of that magic number. No, it went away. Okay, and then just like in last week's problems, finding the sum of the B term, which in this case is 6. All right, so I think, 8, negative 5. Well, that sum is 3. That's not right. Okay, well, so then I think, well, gee whiz, let's do 40 and 1. 40 and negative 1, that's not going to work though. What else? What else are factors of negative 40 that you think for a minute? Okay, what about 10 and negative 4? Those are factors of negative 40 that have a sum of 6. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be using. Okay, and so then I rewrite my original trinomial. So I bring down the 8x squared. Instead of keeping 6x, I'm breaking that into plus 10x, which is this, and minus 4x. And then I'm bringing down my negative 5. So this expression is equivalent to this one. I've just split apart my b. Okay, so again, just like in the last problem, we're going to look at the first two terms. Okay, we look for the greatest common factor. Well, they're both even. Okay, and they're not both divisible by 4 or 5, so I'm going to factor out a 2. And they both have an x, so I'm going to factor out an x. I'll blow this up a little bit. Okay, so then I think 2 times something is 8x squared. So 2 times something is 8, so that's 4, so there's a parenthesis here. And then x times x is x squared. And then 2x times something is 10x, so that's plus 5. Okay, and then I look at the next two terms. Okay, and something that's common there, the only thing, well, 1 and negative 1. And I'm going to choose the negative 1. I factor out the negative 1. Negative 1 times something is negative 4x, so that's 4x. Negative 1 times something is negative 5, and that's plus 5. I chose to factor out a negative 1 so that these two quantities within the parentheses are the same, 4x plus 5 and 4x plus 5. So that is one of my factors. Okay, the other factor is going to be what's outside the two parentheses. So it's going to be 2x, which is this, minus 1. Okay, so if you were to multiply those two binomials together, you would get what we started with. So it even tells you here to check by multiplying factored form. Alrighty, let's go to the next one. Now the steps are no longer there, or the little lines, but these guys left these guys for you. So here we go. What's the first step? Well, here it is, A, B, and C. So A is 3, B is 16, C is 16. Then we identify our magic number, which is AC. So that means 3 times 16. That is 48. So my magic number is 48. So I have to find factors of 48 that have a sum of my B, which is 16. Alright. Okay, so you're probably thinking 6 and 8. Well, that's 14. That doesn't work. Okay, so then 8 and 6, well, obviously 14. 2 and 24. That's 26. Here we go. 12 and 4 multiply together to equal 48, but add together to equal 16. So these are the two that I want to use. So let's go back and look at what the original trinomial was. The original was 3x squared. Actually, I can tell by just looking at the A, B, and the C. Hold on. Okay, so 3x squared. Again, just rewriting what it was originally. Now I'm going to break the B. The B was 16x, or the B was 16 for 16x. I'm going to break that apart into plus 12x plus 4x. So 12x, 4x. And then my C term of plus 16. Okay, so now we have that broken apart. So let's look at our first two terms. So let's factor out the greatest common factor. So the 3 and the 12 are both divisible by 3, and they both have an x term, so I'm going to factor out an x. So 3x times something is 3x squared. I know that's an x. 3 times something is 12x, or 3x times something is 12, so it's 4. Now I'm going to look at my last two terms and see what the greatest common factor is there. So they both have a factor of 4. I cannot factor out an x because the 16 does not have an x. So I'm going to factor out a positive 4. 4 times something is 4x, so that is x. 4 times something is 16, so that's 4. Now again, this and this are equivalent. That's what they should be. So x plus 4 is one of my factors. My other factor is 3x plus 4. You can write them in either order. You can have 3x plus 4 times x plus 4, or the way I wrote it here. Okay. All right, I think there's 2 more examples where I have to write smaller. All righty, here is one of them. So identify A, B, and C. A is 6. B is 5. C is negative 4. My magic number is A times C, which is 6 times negative 4, which is negative 24. This is my magic number. So I need to find factors of negative 24 that have a sum of the B, which is 5. Alrighty, so let's think here. We have 12 and negative 2. Well, fiddlesticks, that's 10. We have, let's see, 6 and negative 4, that's 1. We have 8 and negative 3, that's 5. I'm going to be using those. Okay, so again, I rewrite this. So I have 6x squared. I'm going to break apart my 5x into plus 8x minus 3x, and then bring down my negative 4. Okay, remember this should be equivalent to that. All right, so I'm going to look at my first two terms. Look for the greatest common factor there. Well, they're both divisible by 2. They're not both divisible by 3 or 4, but 2 works for sure. So factor out a 2. They both have an x. And factor out an x. 2x times something is 6x squared. So that would be 3x. 2x times something is 8x. So positive 4. Okay, let's look at the next one. The only thing that's common there is negative 1, or 1, I suppose. So factor out a negative 1. Negative 1 times something is negative 3x, so that would be 3x. And then negative 1 times something is negative 4, so that is plus 4. Fix my 3 here. There we go. Okay, so what you have in the parentheses should be the same. So that is one of my factors. Okay, my other factor is going to be right here. So it's going to be 2x minus 1. If you were to multiply that out, you would get what we started with. Okay, let's do one more. Wait, is this the one we've already done? No, maybe not. Okay. No, it looks familiar. Nope. I don't know why it looks familiar to me. It really looks like this one. Okay, it's different though. Okay. So identify A, B, and C. So A is 3. B is negative 8. C is negative 16. So magic number is A times C, which is 3 times negative 16, which is negative 48. That is my magic number. So I'm finding factors of negative 48 that have a sum of my B. Alrighty. So 8, negative 6, or even if it was like this, it'd be negative 2. Let's see. Negative 24, positive 2. Nope. Nope, nope. Negative 12, positive 4. That's it. Ding, 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 ding. So I'm going to use these two. Alright, so here's my trinomial. I'm going to rewrite it. 3x squared. I'm going to break the linear term into two linear terms. So it's going to be minus 12x plus 4x, and then we bring down my negative 16. Okay, so let's look at the first two terms here. What is common? Well, the 3 and the x are common again. So 3 times something is 3x squared, so all I need to put is an x. And 3x times something is negative 12x, I mean minus 4. Okay, and then if we look at the second two, or the last two terms, look at what's common there. We'll see a positive 4 is common, so you take out a 4. 4 times something is 4x, that's x. 4 times something is negative 16. Okay, so again, these two are equivalent, and as they should be. So then, actually, so one of my factor pairs is factors is x minus 4. The other one is going to be 3x plus 4. Okay, so give those a shot and then jump on office hours if you have any questions.